Today, and many people look back on Deng Xiaoping as the key figure in the second half of the history of the People's Republic and think of him as the great economic reformer. Every so often I hear people say, I wish today, so 2013, 2014, we had a political Deng Xiaoping who could take the kind of leadership stand in politics for political change that Deng took in economics. He was occasionally, when confronted with dissent, Democracy Wall, 1979, and then, of course, massively in 1989 in the Tiananmen demonstrations, chose not to pursue political liberalization. Some would argue that the 1989 moment in China is, as A.J.P. Taylor once said for the German revolutions of 1848, a turning point in history where history failed to turn, the opportunity to lead reform from the top. How do you see it, or how do you think he saw it in 1989?
First of all, let me go back one step to the Democracy Wall in 1978-79. He was the one that started it. He said, let it go. So he was not instinctively against it. What he was worried about in such a chaotic country where so many people were still starving is that if you allowed too much leeway, too much freedom, that people would go to chaos. And indeed, anybody who saw the chaos, even as recently as the Cultural Revolution, who had the responsibility for guiding a country would naturally worry about that chaos. So in 1979, he felt that the chaos around the Democracy Wall was getting too big, and he moved it to another place, which was out of the way, which essentially closed it down. Then in '86, again, he allowed Zhao Ziyang to lead a study of political reform. And it was a very broad gauge study of how do you move a country. It looked at the various socialist states, how they were reforming within themselves. It looked at how Taiwan changed, looked at how other places changed. And it was quite a broad scale study of it. And then the student movement, from his point of view, got out of hand. There were demonstrations, particularly along the Yangtze Delta area, Shanghai, Nanjing, Wuhan, and Beijing, of course. And he thought it was too dangerous. So that was 1986. And then '89 was again a repeat of the same issue. He hadn't stopped it right away. He had allowed people to go to the streets. And for a few weeks, there was no beginning to crack down. In fact, it was the responsibility of others like Zhao Ziyang to try to see that those things were kept under control. But on May 20th of 1989, when he sent in the troops unarmed to try to restore order, and they could not restore order, they were turned back, he felt at that point that he had no choice. So he sent the troops back to the outskirts, let them regroup, and said, look, you have to do what is necessary to regain control. He warned people to stay off the streets, that they wanted to clear the streets. They were trying to regain order. There were broadcasts to clear, but they didn't clear the streets. And a lot of people tried to use buses that they would put across the path of the troops. And the troops first fired in the air, warned, and when people didn't move, they used weapons. We don't know exactly how many people were shot in Beijing. The estimates are several hundred per. There was a Canadian scholar who went to all the hospitals and talked to a lot of officials, estimated maybe 700, 800, 900 people were killed. But when you compare that with the number killed in a lot of other places, from Deng Xiaoping's view, who had a long view of history, he had seen millions die in World War II, millions perish in the Cultural Revolution, millions perish in the Great Leap Forward. It was not something he wanted to do, but he felt, given the choices, that his responsibility was to keep order, and he would reestablish order. And the people who were close to Deng feel that now, 24 years after Deng, that he did keep order, and that China has prospered and a lot of people's lives have improved. And if chaos had continued, if they'd gone the way of the Soviet Union or the Philippines or India, which had far more democracy, people's lives would not improve nearly as much as they did in China. And so Deng's followers feel that he made the right choice.